time it is. Marvin Devine, Huber, Axel, and you know how we do. Yeah, I got the juice. Whip game cool, make them look like cool. Always play it cool, that's the biggest rule. Forget what they doing, keep on doing. I've been making loot since like 22. Ask me how I made it right here in the booth. I'm always pursued cause of what I pursue. That's greatness, yeah, I gotta make it, I got things to lose. Boy, just wanna get in my crew, but you can't get in my crew. Me, XL, and Huber, way too fireable. When this joint drop, better call the troops. And when you hear the drop, better raise the roof. Better raise the roof. You already know what happens when we link up. Let's go. Yeah.
All these brothers, my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice. Cold, these brothers, my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice. Ride or die, 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 ride or die. Cold, these brothers, my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta ride or die.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome, welcome, welcome to my podcast, Bella's Hope for Healing. First of all, let me start out by apologizing. We were having some technical difficulties, and this happens sometimes in this industry, but I'm so happy that you guys are here. Welcome to my regular warrior guest, and welcome to anyone that is new visiting for the first time. So I want to start out by those little things like asking you to please share this broadcast, because sharing is caring. Smash that like button, guys. You know, this show tonight is going to be beneficial, as all our shows are, to everyone. Transplant recipients, those who are waiting, caregivers, potential donors. I mean, you name it, this show is going to be a blessing. Happy birthday to anyone whose birthday is today. And so we may run a little bit over because I got some good stuff for you guys. Hey, Steve, how are you? Hey to everybody that's giving a shout out. So let me go right into this. My guest tonight and I met really early back in the 90s when I became afflicted with kidney disease. I hit the ground running with volunteer work. I knew that that was going to be beneficial to me from my mental well-being. And also, I just wanted to do whatever I could to, enlighten others on what I was going through. And that's when I was so honored to meet my guest tonight, who was already out in this industry and for a very, very, very long time. And so what I want to do is share about his bio to you, because I could never do him justice just speaking on my own just about how awesome he is. So for the past 30 years, my guest, Jack Lynch, has been the driving force for all community and government affairs of the Gift of Hope Organ and Tissue Donation Network. He began his career in 1986, and having gone through different administrations within the organization, one fact still remained, and that was his passion to ensure that all minority communities are respected and treated with compassion. With over 28 years experience as Director of Community Affairs for the Gift of Hope, Mr. Lynch still keeps himself grounded by spending at least one day a week at hospital dialysis centers to talk to those patients about their lives, about educating, and also, really important, giving them some comfort. While with the reality of it is that many lives can linger during our treatment. And those of us that have been through it, we all know that. But he and his leadership have been impeccable. His career is impeccable and has been recognized with over 110 awards guides nationwide, as well as landing him appearances on the Oprah Winfrey Show, 48 hours, CBS's, 48 hours, not to mention features in national and local publications and multiple nationally syndicated and local television shows. He is credited with implementation of what is called the Jack approach by not speaking at families, but with families that are in the midst of tragedy. So Mr. Lynch's outreach efforts have proven very successful in all multicultural communities within the state of Illinois and have been replicated throughout the nation. He is now senior advisor of Gift of Hope and such an asset to the organization. And we want to give him a very warm welcome. My guest, Jack Lynch. Hello, my friend.
Hi there. Are you there?
Hi, how are you?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes, yes.
I apologize for the cell phone use.
That's okay.
Nevertheless, I'm honored to have the opportunity to be here and to share with you and your guests
And
on the subject of organ transplantation and organ and tissue donation, and particularly as to how it impacts the communities of color. So I will thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you, Jack, for being here. I know sometimes it's hard to lock you down. Yeah, I know you're a busy man. That's why I called you the man, the myth, the legend. So I am just really happy to see you. I know it's actually been years since we've seen each other, especially on the even on the transplant circuit, the Gift of Hope, since I relocated. But it's so endearing to see that you're still connected you know, that we're both still connected in that industry. So thank you. And I am going to go right in to some questions for you because I know that you're the perfect person to elaborate on what I'm going to ask. Everyone, by the way, is giving you such a warm welcome. So now this first question, Jack, is actually a three-part question. And the questions were really detailed, so I had to write them all down. So forgive me if I'm not looking at you. Why is it so difficult to receive an organ transplant? And why are people waiting 6 to 7 years to receive a transplant? And lastly, is there any way around that? If my information is correct.
Well, let me go from the back forward. In terms of, are there any ways around that? No, but there are ways through that. And when we started in transplantation, there were approximately 10,000 on the national waiting list. Today, there are 15,000 or so individuals waiting every day. So if you want to know, wait 6 to 7 and even longer, is because there's so many people biting for that phone that maybe 10 times that are already biting for that same phone call. So the quest for a is deeply increased of thousands of more for an organ. The way to get around it, if you will, if that's the language used, is that there is known as either direct, and what that means if you're waiting for or a family member step up, one of their arms, one of their kids. And not only can a family member give you back normal, but a individual that you know or someone who just wants to speak out, they can so do a donation to you. And in fact, that is legal, and it happens more than it used to 15 years ago. So I think one of the things that people do is, one, watch programs like you. And the second thing to do is to advocate for it. But there's probably more important than to take ownership of your life.
Excuse me, Jack. May I interject? I apologize. Can you do a little adjustment of your phone? Unfortunately, you're cutting in and out. So it could be the positioning.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, I so far so good. Some other people are saying that they can't, unfortunately, hear you.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, it's okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry, you can continue. Hopefully that'll make a difference and it'll be better.
So I think the key thing is that I prefer that patients recognize that if you're in renal failure, probably one of the more significant things you can do is, one, get under the care of a nephrologist, and two, be a good patient. If they instruct you regarding things not to do, then don't do those things in an abundance. You know, if they tell you stay away from certain foods, processed foods, if they tell you to stay away from certain dead animals, then do so. Pardon me. I think that one of the key things about the volume of patients is the fact that people believe that they are different type of machine and they don't do what they in fact should be doing to keep that machine of theirs or themselves well tuned and well manicured, if you will, in that you learn to be a good patient and you can put off renal failure specifically. Now, as it turns out with other organs that you can't put off, If you're waiting for a heart or if you're waiting for a liver transplant, you in fact need to receive that organ and receive that organ in a timely fashion in order to save your life. We're doing so much of a better job, Audrey, if you will, in terms of the surgery. But on a percentage basis, we're not recovering from a percentage basis any more organs today than we were 25 years ago. So percentage, we've got to do a better job. But I think the way to address that is that you take better care of your body and get under the care of a primary care physician and learn to be a good patient. I hope that answers that.
Okay. Yeah. I think that what you said in relation to making sure that you do what is necessary, the changes that they want us to make in the beginning, and those are always going to vary from person to person, depending on each person's circumstances. But I definitely agree. There's major changes oftentimes that have to be made, and I've often felt as in fact with quite a few of those that are afflicted with kidney disease, some people have a hard time making those changes, and the situation of course only continues to get worse. Now I know you did probably answer the question with regard to the waiting period of 6 to 7 years. Can you say again what that is now? Because that was really the time when you were rather cutting out.
Okay.
Is Jack, and excuse me, Jack, is Jack's volume okay? Because I did see someone make a comment about, I don't know if it was like too loud. You sound fine on my end, but I'm not the audience.
Okay.
Someone is saying, can you turn yours down a little bit on your end because there's feedback, I guess, from your volume.
All right.
Thank you, Tamara. Appreciate that.
So
go ahead, Jack.
Why does it take so long? Well, there are just tenfold number of patients waiting for that same phone call that you were waiting on. And as I indicated up front, when I started in 1986, 87, there were approximately 10,000 individuals on the national waiting list waiting for that phone call. Today, they're better than 110,000, quite frankly, somewhere north of 115,000, waiting for that same phone call. And the rate of donation hasn't increased in order to satisfy the thousands of new individuals that have been added and who are waiting. So we have to do a better job on both ends. One, of taking care of our bodies and being very mindful of how we treat them in terms of what we put in this hole in the middle of our face, our mouth. The second thing, if you're found to be hypertensive, please, by all means, make sure you get under a primary care doctor's guidance and manage your blood pressure. Blood pressure, high and untreated and undertreated blood pressure, has the ability to do very, very bad things to the kidney. And then that process just continue in terms of negative things, in terms of the pancreas failing, and quite frankly, on down to the heart, where hearts become enlarged because elevated blood pressure can do strange things to aforementioned standard heart. So you have a responsibility, as well as healthcare professionals, to do all you can to be a good stewardship to your body.
Absolutely, and you couldn't be more correct, Jack, on that blood pressure issue. I know when I found out, got really sick all of a sudden and found out I had kidney disease, my blood pressure had skyrocketed, unbeknownst to me, so high that en route to the hospital, I literally went blind. That's how high it was. They said if I had gotten there 15, 20 minutes later, I was about to have a massive stroke. So blood pressure, as you said, is no joke. That has to really be gotten under control if you're in an early stage of it, because which is why they call it the silent killer. It totally starts to destroy the kidneys. And I'm sure that was the case with me over time. I just didn't realize it. So guys, also, if you have any questions for Jack, please don't hesitate in the comment box to ask them. I'm sure Jared will put them out as we go along. Okay, second question, Jack. It seems that people of color wait a lot longer than Caucasian people for a transplant. Is that true? And if so, what is the federal government doing to address this issue?
Well, in fact, it is true that we wait longer, but disproportionately, no matter where you live, if you were to go to a renal dialysis program, disproportionately, even for people who don't live in that immediate community, African Americans, Hispanics, and other individuals of color, they're going to dominate those patients that are on those machines. We don't have the same level of access to preventive healthcare measures. And when we do, we don't take all the precautions that we should take. That is a formula for destruction of your body. There's something diabolically wrong when, as you put it, you did not realize how bad your blood pressure was until it was almost too late. You're right also that it is silent in its destruction of your body. I think the most important message that I would want to communicate this evening is that the federal government can pull all types of rabbits out of its hat, but nothing could be more critical for patients than for them to take primary ownership and practice preventive healthcare measures. If you're hypertensive, take your medication. You do not have to have symptoms in order for the destruction to be rampant. And so some of the things that we and those folks in the federal government are doing is that the allocation process that's in place regarding is the process fair for people of color, it's being addressed even as we speak. And in some sense, it almost will fall on deaf ears if we, meaning people like myself, who are in the hospital working with potential donor families, or someone such as myself is not doing a better job in terms of advocating in the community and on programs like this. I think I have grown to realize that when people know more, they will do more. But we've got to do a better job of getting that message out there. And we have to also continue to do a better job of taking care of our bodies.
Absolutely. And as you said, and we feel the same way, this is definitely the type of platform to do that.
Yes.
I mean, because we already know most people are on social media of various ages. And I do feel oftentimes that our seniors, in my opinion, it would seem like our seniors that are dealing with renal disease suffer a little more, because I just feel that they are not getting the TLC, that they need, in regard to their situation. And many are not even capable of asking the right questions. They just totally go on whatever they're told and just roll with it,
You along those lines is that one of the things I think I'm noted for is not pulling punches. And that is, a primary care doctor should release you to the care of a specialist, a kidney specialist or heart specialist. And I'm coming to find that many times they don't do that soon enough in terms of referring you on to someone in a different discipline. And I'm not at this point saying that it's for any other reason other than they want and feel that they can take care of that patient. And as you know, and specifically if I focus on African Americans, if our pastor or our doctor tell us something, then we will, run that all away versus questioning, some of the things or reading about some of the things that we need to be mindful of. I would offer this without apology. No one, absolutely no one, should have more jurisdiction over your body and the management of it than you.
Yes, definitely. So well put. Yes. So I want to stay with this few more questions regarding the people of color. And the reason being, and for everyone, of course, in the audience, African Americans, Hispanics are disproportionately higher in, regard to renal failure.
Yes.
And that's a given. I think that if anyone has done homework or research on this, that's exactly what you're going to see off the charts. So is it true that people of color do not register and or donate because they believe that Caucasian people are going to receive their life-saving organs, and if they go ahead and make that decision to donate as people of color?
So in all three parts of your question, the answer is yes. But let me put some numbers to the first part of your question. We are, as African Americans, we're 10 times more likely than whites to be hypertensive. We're 4 times more likely than whites to end up in organ failure. We're also 4 times more likely than whites to end up on dialysis. So here in this country, we are 20% or less of the total population. But here in the state of Illinois, African Americans represent almost 50% of the patients waiting and on dialysis. So disproportionately, if you don't, again, manage your health care to the best of your ability, pulling out all possible stops, you end up on my service waiting, and quite frankly, you're right, sometimes waiting in vain. And what I mean by that is that dialysis, if you will, is kind of just a stopgap. It's not the cure to kidney failure. A transplant certainly can address and get you off of that dialysis machine. But when you look around the country, less than 10% of the organs that are donated are the result of Blacks donating. So what does that mean? We are taking, if you will, more than our own ethnic group gives. Here's what I know for a fact. 9 out of 10 organs that are transplanted are not the result of African Americans or Hispanics donating. So what does that mean in real language? What that means that 9 out of 10 organs that every Hispanic or person of color has came from a white organ donor. So we don't have the right to point the finger when we have 3 coming back at ourselves. We have to start with our own backyard, mow around that bush, and realize that I have come to find that African Americans specifically are no less willing than any other ethnic group to know more about donation and participate. But that message is not consistently gotten out to our community. And you have people like myself who have done a fair amount, but it's nowhere near enough in terms of broadcasting. The broadcasting needs to be on a consistent basis, and that message needs to get out there so that people will know that someone that looks like them is on the battlefield trying to do all that they can to enhance and in many cases save their lives. But it's a never-ending point.
You are so right about that, because I'm also an organizer with LifeLink of Florida, and when I do those speaking engagements, set up the table to promote organ donation, even in death, which is obviously what we're talking about for the people I'm signing up. This is only if that's imminent. There's so many things I try to talk to them about, to dispel some of their myths and misconceptions. And you're right, it is a struggle. It is a just a never-ending battle. But based on what you just shared, do you feel that people of color possibly not register to be donors because they have this innate fear that everything possible that would be done, if in the event that it was, they had to go to the ER for a health issue or an accident, that their lives won't be saved? And is it true too that if they register as is it true too that if they register as an organ donor, if they were to change, or a tissue donor as well, you can change your mind if you were to choose to do that?
Sure, you can. But first part of your question is that if, in fact, for a whole host of reasons, you find yourself a patient in the emergency room. I've been involved in this area of medicine for nearly 40 years now. No one's going through your pockets to see if you're registered as an organ donor. No one's reading your driver's license. The staff in the hospital are focused on trying to stabilize you and save your life. They aren't vested in trying to see if, in fact, you are a declared organ donor. Therefore, we're not going to do anything to help save your life. Think about it in this fashion. The vast majority of our organ donors are individuals who end up in the intensive care unit that have been declared brain dead.
Yeah.
With that said, if you're in the emergency room and they don't do everything they can to stabilize you, you would never make it up to the intensive care unit to be further sophisticated care. So all these things don't follow. That I understand where it's coming from. I mean, as an African-American male, I clearly understand where it's coming from. But simply because I know where the secondary thoughts about the validity of the process are out there, it doesn't make them true, and they are not true. No one's going to ramble through your pockets to see if you're an organ donor, to see if, in fact, they're going to work diligently to save your life. Not at all. Ever, never.
Jared, could you put that comment back up? I think it was from Tamara, please. Yeah, I know that's one thing, but I think too, Jack, when there is lack of educating, a person educating themselves on these things, I mean, and then it comes down to bottom line, you're going to believe what you want to believe for whatever reason, that you want to believe it. But so many of those things can be dispelled if, like I call it, you just do your homework on it. Talk to other people that have walked that walk, or in some way, or other potential, even living donors. I mean, which is really, the sweetest gift, to get that organ from a living donor.
Sure.
Jared, when you get a chance, can you put that question back up there? Or it was a comment, but it was really good. I was reading it. Okay, so before surprise kidney failure, we can ask our doctors to check for kidney disease by getting an order for lab work at each annual exam. Marlon said, could you explain that people don't people don't understand the process of donation, and that's a big challenge. I think you kind of, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think that's a critical point, the process. The process is one that I'm well too familiar with. The way in which an individual will probably travel is that he or she could be, and let's focus for a moment, if we will, on kidneys primarily. They could end up, as a result of those labs being drawn, and it's determined that the clearance of your kidneys is 20% or less, meaning the kidneys are failing and they're almost functioning down to a point where it isn't recognizable. That means you must go on dialysis. Your body must be rid of the challenges that your normal kidney process will carry you through, and that is removing waste and removing it by way of the urine and expelling it out of the body. That is the normal process of ending up on dialysis, is that is not going correctly. If in fact you are placed on dialysis, you will normally get a fistula placed in either your neck, in your groin area, or in your arm, and they'll look for access in any number of other locations. And 3 days a week, 4 hours a day, you will be attached to that machine. You will have your name placed on the kidney waiting list, and then that's where you linger on that machine for that number of days a week, for that number of hours a week. If in fact you don't advocate for yourself and go on Facebook or get into many of the other communication stratas that we have out there, and you let people you know and people that you don't even know that you're waiting on a kidney. Because if you're waiting on the process of kidney donation, as I pointed out earlier, there's such a demand that people are waiting 6, 8 years. And if in fact you don't mind that, if in fact your body can tolerate that dialysis for that many years, then have at it. I mean, let's look at what's going on today. Let's just look at the issues surrounding the virus and disproportionate people that look like you and I that are ending up in the critical care unit on ventilators. Some of that didn't have to happen if we practice preventive healthcare measures by wearing a mask and getting vaccinated. But it's almost in some sense like pulling teeth to get people to recognize that some of the objections that I hear, well, they're just experimenting on us. Well, I tell you what you do with that comment. Let's see if all of that fits on your obituary. Because if you end up on a ventilator and your breathing ability becomes extremely challenged, there's more than a fair possibility that you're not going to survive and be extubated from that ventilator. You're not going to make it. When you could have just done the right thing, get the vaccination and practice preventive healthcare measures by wearing a mask. The same attitude holds true regarding end-stage organ failure. Be a good patient, do what you're told to do, and I would also, I cannot emphasize, advocate for yourself. Go on all the forms of social media, put your name there, and don't just simply wait on the system to come, because you could wait in vain.
So Lisa G, this is a interesting comment / question she has, which states, with all these young people being shot down, there should be a lot of organs being used instead of going to the grave, even if they are 14 to 15 years old and not registered. Why can't their organs be used for someone that's in need?
So multiple responses to that. First off, if you're not in the registry that you registered in your state with the DMV to be an organ donor, that simply means that your family has to be interacted with. Your loved ones have to be offered the option of us recovering your organs. And if in fact they say no, then Lisa's correct. Then those organs go to the grave and are of no value and use to anyone. The second thing is that I pointed out that the vast majority of these people that I believe Lisa's speaking of, they go asystole, meaning their heart has stopped. And unless there is a process of preparing the body just right away when the heart is stopped, then those organs are not useful. We cannot
Right.
take organs out of individuals that have met an untimely death on the street, transported to the hospital, and declared dead. In large part, those individuals' organs are not usable because rigor and everything and all the other cell deaths
Yes.
take place. Its normal process of organ recovery come as a result of people being declared brain dead. And in fact, their bodies from the shoulders down are still being managed. They are on a ventilator. And when in fact the patient has been declared brain dead, it is also at that time that people like myself approach those families, offer them the option of donation. And as you mentioned in your introduction of me, what I found that Blacks are no less willing, Hispanics are no less willing when we show how much we care versus how much we know. So as healthcare professionals, we need to do a better job of learning to talk with people, not at them.
Absolutely. Yes. And and also with regard to the question from Lisa, like you said, Jack, gunshot victims sustain a lot of physical damage, especially depending on the caliber of the weapon, and we're talking about a very time sensitive, thing with that. But what also, if I'm not mistaken, and you can answer this as well, Jack, I think that even let's say if it's a natural death of what did she use, a 15, 16-year-old, of course, somebody driving, let's say they have it on their driver's license. So let's say 16, 17-year-old. Even if death is imminent and that child chose to be a donor, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. And I'm sure you probably heard about this, Jack. This young man, this awesome young man, St. Pete football player, the star of the football team, Jaquise Welsh, unfortunately had, I think it was like an arterial embolism, died, and he wanted to donate. He had just gotten his driver's license and asked his mom, what did that mean? The question about donation. And she said, oh, that means if you were unfortunately to die, that your organs, would be donated. And she said, but that's up to you. You don't have to check that. And he goes, no, we found this out through talking to her, because I was interviewed over at TGH about that, Tampa General Hospital, about that incident. And he said, if I can save somebody's life, I'm dead. What do I need it for? Now, that's a rarity. Okay. That is an amazing kid. However, even though he chose to do that, and his mom was so awesome, could she not have said, no, I don't want that done, even though he signed up for it? Because that I get asked that off sometimes too.
So the response is that it depends on which state you're in. Here in Illinois, if in fact you declare that you want to be an organ donor, I have to hedge on part of my response, because I believe until you reach the age of 18, a family or immediate family member can rescind that consent. If you are 18 and you've declared that you want to be an organ donor and your parents sign that consent form, that's quite frankly binding. And so it's the flavor of how that conversation is presented in the beginning. But I think the vast majority of patients' families that I've encountered, they say no because they, as one of your questions alluded to, they don't know enough about the process. One of the things I know for sure is that I never arrive at the hospital to interact with a family unless there's a pending death or death that has already occurred. That's one death. What I try to do with families is to suggest to them strongly that they have the ability by giving us a yes in terms of consent to diminish the number of others who would die that same day. So if they give us consent and we take that individual to the operating room and we do that recovery, there are no telltale signs that organs have been taken out of one's body. What's going to be different is that which is in your heart, and that the loss of your loved one. So I think you asked early on about why is there such a high reluctance. You're correct. There aren't enough programs like this. There aren't enough dollars and budgets to do a better job of getting the information out there so that people can make their decisions from fear and not their gut. Because when you get those knee-jerk responses, I quite frankly chalk that up to the fact that I've not approached the subject correctly with them. And I try to go back in terms of, listen, well, maybe I wasn't clear. And I will tell you, I said it 3 times, I believe. Let me say it for the 4th time. When you talk with people and not at them, no matter what the ethnicity is, organ donation normally comes out the winner.
True. So this is a little deep, but I can't remember the last time that I saw a person of color receiving a life-saving transplant that was surrounded by a TV program, widely, bottom line, widely publicized. Why do you think that is?
Well, this area, in my area of healthcare, is no different than what we walk every day as a person of color. It's no different. Don't think that biases, whether they're covert or overt, don't exist. I walk the walk every day, and I'm one of alleged leading individuals doing what I do around the country. But it is difficult to get cameras to come out unless there's something extremely negative. But in terms of painting the positive, rosy picture, you're right. They do not do it anywhere near enough. And as important as what they don't do is that we don't demand it. So again, some of the responsibility rides and dies with me, about me and my loved ones. And let me give you an example. The former superintendent of police in Chicago was at a press conference several years ago, and he became very lethargic and dizzy while at the podium speaking.
Oh, Eddie
Johnson. He nearly passed out. And he knew he was in kidney failure at that time. I knew he was in kidney failure. And he called me once the hospital released him that day. He says, you know what? We've got to make the announcement today that I'm in kidney failure. And he held a press conference. And it was so interesting, if you will. That press conference was full of the media, the viewed, the spoken, and the printed. There were 30-odd individuals there representing those various disciplines. And I asked myself that same question that your listening and viewing audience asked. Well, why don't they come out when we have issues? If it's someone big or something big, they break the doors down. But in that audience, on that night of Eddie Johnson's press conference, there were 2 other individuals that had press conferences that day because I attended both of them. And the press conference was virtually not a press conference because no media showed up. Because they were regular Joe Blow.
Yeah.
Didn't warrant it. So I think we need to do a better job of not only demanding it, but don't stop advocating until we get it.
Definitely. So very, very true. So many people as well, Jack. And Debbie, thank you for that comment. Yeah, she had stated that's my partner over at the Tampa General. She was saying that LifeLink will not use the organs if a family doesn't agree. So that's here in Florida, and I thought I remembered that, and I could not remember though if that were the case, and when I was back in the Chi in Illinois. So
Okay.
yeah, as you said, different strokes for different folks as far as states are concerned. But many people are so confused by the financial aspect of transplantation, which is really, really critical, because it's not free.
No, it is.
Transplantation is not free, and this is another reason it's so important to ask questions, to do your own homework, and prayerfully get a great transplant coordinator and social worker. But would you mind sharing a little bit about the financial factor to enlighten some people on that, just kind of what's behind the scenes?
Let me thank you for that question from your audience. It is true. Ultimately, someone pays for it. But if in fact you're waiting for a kidney, if you're not fully insured, in many cases the federal government picks up that cost for your kidney transplant. Look at it from this standpoint. It costs $50,000 to dialyze a patient. A transplant is going to cost the same thing, but then that stops that patient from staying on that dialysis on the average of 7-8 years waiting on a kidney to be donated. So yes, ultimately someone pays it, and unfortunately it is the system that is in place that the federal government, if you are a nationalized citizen, will pick up your costs if in fact you're waiting for a kidney. So your individual that asked that question, I'm glad that they asked it, because either we as citizens pay for it, or in some sense we pay for your care in terms of dialysis.
And so we're talking about, the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Medicare automatically kicks in.
Sure it does.
When you are diagnosed with actually at end-stage renal disease.
That's exactly right.
And even I did not know that back when, my illness was, when I got diagnosed, obviously, but also more importantly, when I was getting nearer to transplant and all of those financials started coming up. It was really a blessing to be in a career with great health insurance. And so when they presented me with that, I said, oh, I don't need Medicare. My insurance, will cover it. But it was just really awesome. They said, no, this is automatic. So it was like Blue Cross paid 80% and Medicare paid 20%. And then has this changed, Jack? They generally will cover your immunosuppressant medication. Back in Illinois at that time, for me, it was up to 3 years. Is that still the same?
It is, in fact, that they will cover it after that. And there, the situation or the equation, if you will, has just been compounded even more so, because I indicated that if you are a nationalized citizen, or that you qualify for federal rights just like anyone else. And pardon me, because my sinuses continue.
That's okay. I picked that up.
But one of the things that's important is that we are getting folks that, quite frankly, end up in our country, and they end up, because of lack of access to preventive healthcare measures, they end up in organ failure, and they are trying to get on the list waiting for a successful transplant. And so you're not only having nationalized citizens, but we're being, challenged, if you will, by an increased number of people who also don't have access to good health care preventive measures. We've got to do a better job of managing our bodies. But I, as a healthcare professional, I clearly recognize that my problem, if you will, Audrey, is that there aren't enough hours in the day to be out advocating. There aren't enough vehicles, meaning the various forms of the media, that are at my beck and call so that we can do a better job of getting this information out. So I will tell parents, I will tell patients, I will tell family members, do for yourself to some extent and get involved as Audrey did up front, even while she was waiting. Get involved and advocate and know, because the life you could save could very well be the person you see in the mirror.
And and I'll tell you, I chose to, I watched my grandmother go through kidney disease, and that was really devastating, and be on dialysis for about 10 years before she transitioned. I was grateful that her life lasted that long. She never had any prospects of a transplant because of her age. But just watching her suffer through that, I knew I didn't want that for me. She definitely didn't want that for me and made it known, but I did not want that. So my desire to get involved in those different arenas was also to help me.
Sure.
Even more importantly, stay uplifted and not allow myself to get in that funk, because you got to keep yourself really as focused as possible, in a positive way, healthy as you can, because if you're too sick, you can't get the transplant. Correct. Because your body's already going to fight it. So Correct. If you're very sick, the probability of your body receiving it well is not very good. And again, as Jack's just talked about, the financial factor with that is, gargantuan. I like that word, but
there's another component to this, and that is people of color unfortunately show up for evaluation with multiple system failures, in that they're diabetic. They could very well have hypertrophy of the heart, as well as pending, almost within a couple of days, of renal failure. And all of those things have to be managed. So you come in with comorbidities and issues. You're just not as healthy as, quite frankly, others from other ethnic groups who do as I suggested, and that is be involved in your healthcare. Be involved to the fullest extent. Don't just take, I cannot tell you, and just before coming online today, my area is the recovery of organs, but I cannot tell you that somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 patients a month are somehow or another getting referred to me because their programs have said that, there's nothing else they can do for them. Well, don't just take that, then go to another program.
That's right.
You owe it to yourself to advocate for yourself. Yes, it is a maze of things to be concerned about, but the maze that is out there is not an impossible one. You can really navigate through it. I watch rich folks, I watch poor folks, all find their way through the maze, and they're around today to talk about it.
I couldn't agree with you more with regard to what you said about if this hospital doesn't want to accept you, don't give up. Try another one, because that's exactly what happened with me. I started out with the University of Chicago, that I love. And my nephrologist was amazing. We had a very, very lengthy relationship, friendship from the time I was diagnosed in '94 until the time came when I was really, my health was really starting to deteriorate a little more, which was in by then the early 2000s.
Okay.
And my godson, I had a living donor.
Sure.
He was 25 years old, didn't smoke, didn't drink, pescatarian, just the epitome of a healthy person. And I don't, if for whoever doesn't know this, when you're going to have a potential living donor, they will not give them the same doctor as you. And so, they got to go on their own. But anyway, they wouldn't accept him. And it was only because his calcium level was running a fraction of a point high. We went over to Northwestern, boom, they gave us the transplant. And so, here I am today. And I just want to ask you this last question. This is for anyone thinking about, possibly being a living donor, because this is real important. With regard to someone that's a living donor, if they give a kidney, one of their kidneys, of course, they only have the one left. If that one kidney should begin to fail, is it true that because of what they did as far as giving one, they go to the top of the list to get to?
Yeah. That is absolutely true. Okay. And also along with that is that you can function extremely well as long as you're taking care of your body with one kidney. Mm-hmm. You can do very, very well. There's no residuals that are negative if you only have one kidney. Mm-hmm. I think what's important is that when your listening and viewing audience know what it really involves, and they're talking with people like myself who are involved in this each and every day, their reluctance and their skepticism is greatly diminished, because I cannot overemphasize, I prefer that they put me out of business. They don't need what I bring to the table. But that will come in higher numbers when you take care of your body and you're mindful of what you put in this hole in the middle of your face. Diets have so much ability to cause us to expire prematurely or bring organ failure earlier than we needed to be.
So very, very true. Well, Jack, this has been wonderful. You have been such a wealth of information and knowledge for us. I so appreciate you agreeing to be a guest on this show. And I'm sure so many people have been blessed by all the information that you have given. And hey, I know you're going to keep doing what you're doing, and the community is so appreciative of all the things you've done. And you've done some amazing things, my friend, out here. And you definitely left a legacy for us all. And so just to close out, I always select a scripture for each of my guests, and that reminds me of them or what they've gone through. And the one that I feel God led me to regarding you was from Philippians 2:13, which says, for it is God who works in you to will and act in order to fulfill his purpose. So well done, good and faithful servant. And I know you're going to be retiring soon. I'm coming to the party. And I am just so grateful for you, brother. You are just so amazing. Thank you so much for coming. And I look forward to us, maybe doing another event in Chicago.
Absolutely. To quote one of my advisors through the years, when I didn't think I could deal with the bureaucracy and the struggle, that person was former Judge R. Eugene Pincham. In every one of his conversations that we had or any written correspondence, he always ended that by saying, the payment is in the struggle. Mm-hmm. And pay.
Yes, yes. Eugene was another amazing man. God rest his soul. Thank you, Jack. Have a wonderful night, my friend. God bless you.
Be blessed.
Okay, you too. Well, thanks so much, everybody. I realized that we ran a bit over and we were having those technical difficulties, but I just really wanted to get all of those questions out there that I had for Jack, and I was able to do that. Thank you all. Please, again, hit the share button so that other people can see this. That's the great thing. This is not over until it's over. So thank you guys so much. You guys continue to take care of yourselves, continue to uplift each other, continue to be patient and faithful. If you're waiting on that life-saving organ, you're gonna get it. And just remember that Jesus loves you, and so do I, and there's nothing you can do about it. Have a wonderful night. God bless.